Good evening and welcome to Prog Monster. Sorry, I'm just going to move this down a bit. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show that's dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So here we are again, day number 23, with progressive rock albums from the 1980s. Today we're going to talk about a group that is basically an instrumental group that has a lot of avant-garde progressive rock and some, maybe a little bit of ROL and some little bits of other genres in there as well. So for those of you who have not been to this episode and not seen what we're doing here, we're basically doing one-offs. So basically I have 31 albums here for 31 days, one album per day of music I have never heard before in the progressive rock field. Now this could be bands that I'm well known about, bands I've had lots of stuff to do with, but for some reason never did this album. They could be bands that I've had some albums of theirs and listened to some of their music, but this particular album I have not listened to. Could be bands that I've heard about and known about, but for some reason have never gotten over that hump to get into them. And then the last category is the one, again, we're doing today, which is bands that I've never heard of before, know nothing about, and have never heard any of their stuff before. Those ones tend to be the most challenging because you don't know what to expect. So it's a bit harder on the listening. However, this band is not too bad. So the band we're doing today is called Bird Songs of the Mesozoic. The album Fault Line came out in 1989, I believe. There are 13 tracks on this album. So a bit about the album overall. After having listened to it, I tend to get an overall view of it and then maybe different specific views of certain songs. That's how I tend to like to do it. That way I don't really miss anything. So the band has got a fairly heavy avant-garde feel to it. They tend to push the limits on stuff a little bit. They're not as extreme as some bands are. Just an example, a lot of their songs have this kind of mellow, kind of easy listening to sound. Then it gradually changes into a much harsher, almost irritating noise at points, but never enough to kind of really get you annoyed or get you off the book. Just enough to wake you, I guess, is the best way to describe it. So they have quite a bit of that in their music. They're quite keyboard dominated, with a lot of piano in there as well, and some organ, and of course a lot of synthesizers. So that part, they have a lot of that in their music. So if you like that kind of avant-garde progressive noise that comes with some progressive rock bands, this is a good band. This band is also an instrumental band, so there's no vocals. A lot of people prefer that. I'm not a big fan of that, so it's much harder for instrumental progressive rock bands to really gain a foothold with me. It takes longer for them, let's put it that way. There are some nice saxes on use of the saxophone and other wood instruments. I think there actually is a few trumpets on here too, but they play some of this stuff so softly that it's really difficult to see it as a brass or a woodwind instrument. And for some of them, I think they're also fed through the synthesizers, so it kind of distorts them a bit. There's quite a bit of distortion on this album as well. A lot of kind of scratchy distortion parts in a fair number of the songs, which I don't really like. I don't mind distortion with guitar, but for some reason any other instruments, it just irritates me. So yeah, so there's a lot of that. Some really tasteful use of percussion instruments, and I think some nice kind of drum fills and parts there for the percussion part of it. Sorry. Yeah, and there's a couple of songs here where I hear a few different kind of, I don't know if they intended on it, but there's a few parts where I'm hearing bits from some songs that I've known from other groups. So anyways, what else can I tell you about them? Yeah, pretty overall a fairly mellow band. Not a really heavy band at all. Lots of different sounds and instruments. I think they really are a band that like to push the outer limits of having a hard time. It'll pass. That usually does. Anyways, they sound like they want to push the envelope of different noises quite a bit. This is common with a lot of these avant-garde bands as well. They're artistic by nature, and so it's their nature to want to experiment and explore and create something new. That's the hallmark of an artist, wanting to create something new. And I have a daughter who's an expert artist in drawing anyways, and just about anything she touches, so I've had some experience watching this develop. Okay, so the group Bird Songs of the Mesozoic and the album Fault Line. So the first track on this album is called True Wheelbase. Sorry, The True Wheelbase. Nice keyboard opening. It's fairly melodic. Most of their songs are like this. They have a melodic part that slowly turns into an irritating part, which is not necessarily on all tracks, but on this particular track, yes, there's a sax. At least I think it's a sax, or it could be a very mellow trumpet. Now, usually with the sax or the trumpet is usually cleaner sounding, whereas the sax, usually you can hear the reed, or you can hear that kind of distorted part that it gets when you blow into it too hard. Yeah, I'm not really quite sure which one it is here, but there is quite a bit of distortion on this song, so I think it probably is the sax. But it's nicely, tastefully done. This is one of the better tracks on the album. I think I gave 3 songs a 6. Most of the album is a 5, and then there's a couple of 4s in here too. I think there's actually 1 3 too. Yeah, there is 1 3. So overall, a passable album, pretty good. But again, it's one of those albums that I think, because I've never heard it before and it's something new and has some different sounds and stuff like that, it requires more than just one listen to for it to be penetratable, like this. Some of these albums, like with me, progressive rock takes time to develop, and that's what I'm getting here, which is a good thing, right? So, okay, so track number 2, The Walk Among Us. Okay, it opens with this kind of Led Zeppelin. It's that Levy Breaks kind of drum, boom, boom, like right at the beginning. That's what I thought. I thought that they'd switched me to a Zeppelin song by accident, but it then kicks into a kind of more of a rhythm, more of a distorted riff again. There's some nice synths on this particular track. They also have a lot of distortion, especially in the middle part of this song. Quite a bit of distortion, and then before it returns to that kind of melodic riffing melody that it started with. So a pretty solid track. Not great, but not bad. The next song is called Coco Budokan. I think that's how it's pronounced. Coco Budokan. So it's nice piano start. There's a lot of nice piano on this album as well. I think quite a bit of it. Nice piano and guitar riffing here. Well, I don't know if the piano is actually riffing, but it's adding to that overall feel. It's got this continuous riff or melody that goes on throughout the song. And then the other instruments gradually join in, and then you have a multitude of them, and then that's when you start getting more of that distortion, but not too much on this particular track. Yeah, so some pretty catchy beats on this song. I gave this song a 6.2, so it's another one of the songs I like quite a bit on the album. The next song is I Don't Need No Crystal Ball. Fairly fast-paced song. This is one of the faster-paced songs on the album. Some nice beats here, but a bit of that choppy. It's a bit choppy at times. What do I mean by that? Okay, so it's going along at a fairly nice melodic pace, and then it starts getting choppy. The instruments start not really blending together. I think they're trying to create that distortion, but a different type of distortion. They're very inventive with the distortion part of their music, I find. Almost a screeching at some points. It's almost gets into the realm of screeching, but then backs off. Like they like to take things to the edge, but come back. They're a big band for that. I find they like I said they like to experiment to the edge, and they like distortion. So there's quite a bit of it here. Okay, Chariots of Fire, and no, it's not the one from Vangelis. It's a different one altogether. It's a quiet piano opening, nice synthesizer joining in, and then you get some keys and some organ here. Like this is one of the first songs with some noticeable organ on it. Builds up into some interesting sounds as we go along here. Not an overly distorted song at all. There's hardly any in this song. It's almost like they're just playing a nice mellow little waltz type bit, but it's not a waltz, but like that type of thing. So pretty decent song. Magic Fingers is the 6th track on this album. Sax and some keys that create a bit of a moody feel to this song. This song's a little bit more moody than some of the others. The piano is really good. Some nice organ on this particular track too. What else can we say about this one? Yeah, it's just overall fairly keyboard oriented on this particular track. A little more than I mean, they have quite a bit of keyboards. Like there's a lot of piano, a lot of keyboards. I think there's probably some electric piano here. There's definitely some organ at parts too. So this song has a little bit of that, but it's not dominated by it like most of the tracks. Next track up is Fault Line. That's the title track. Some heavy piano and guitar soloing right at the beginning, and then the piano kind of roams around a bit and kind of reminds me of the part in the Peanuts movie. Those little Peanuts, the Charlie Brown TV shows that they have, where they have that. Yeah, there's a little bit of that feel to this particular song. And this is what I said, they do have a little bit of parts that they pull from other sources of music and put in here. And definitely has that feel to it. Yeah, pretty detailed piano, keyboards, the normal stuff on here. Nothing abnormal. They like to push the realm, but they never go off the edge. Well, maybe there's one track they go a little bit too far over the edge, but mostly they don't. The next track is On the Street Where You Live. Opens with a nice piano, some organ, some sax, maybe some synthesizer in there. I think sometimes they like to feed the saxophone through the synthesizer too. That's a feeling I get here. I don't have a list of who plays what or what instruments are played. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to get a feel for the music. Pretty hard to get a feel for the music the first time through, but if I like to do this in a way because it kind of, I know I'm going off topic slightly here, but I kind of like to listen to once off, because by doing that it gives you a kind of an overall feel of the album, and then you can tell by doing that comparing it to other albums that you've liked or disliked, you can tell by how it makes you feel the first time. It might be comparable to something that you really liked later, but got that same feel at the beginning, so it encourages me to go back and listen to it again. So that's part of the reason why I do it. I like the one-offs. Yeah, some nice sax here, some nice pianos, very interesting sounds. They have a nice beat and a riff to this particular track. Pretty solid track, I think. Then we get to Maybe I Will. This is another song I gave a 6 to. A very jazzy piece. This one's more jazzy than I think anything else I can remember on the album. I think this is the jazziest piece. Some nice sax here. And it's quietly dominating, if that makes sense. Like, the sax is going on for a fairly length of time. It's dominating, but it's not overpowering, I guess is a good way to put it. Now, what else can we say about this track? Yeah, it's a good track. I don't mind. I gave it a 6 as well. So they've had 3 6s at this point. None of these are my favorite yet. My favorite track is actually the very last one. There Is Nobody. That's the next track. Some heavy bass here and guitar right at the beginning, and then the trumpet jumps in and just. I'm sure this time it's the trumpet jumps in and just really pushes this right to the top as far as their heaviness. This may be the heaviest track on the album. And it builds, and then it starts getting noisy, and then noisy is a good word to describe it. It's kind of going, like they are all working together, and then they all start kind of going off, and other instruments join in there. It kind of becomes a bit just like noise. That's a feeling I get for it. But overall, not a terrible track, but probably my least favorite track on the album. I gave it a 3. I think there was the noisy distortion. This was the one song on the album I think they went a bit too far. Normally they go to a certain distance with the distortion and noises, and then they come back. So it doesn't get too far. But this one I think they went maybe over a little bit on it. And not a terrible amount. Like, I didn't want to cut the song off, but I was starting to get annoyed with it at one point. The next song is called Slow Boy. Another piano opening, very repetitious, and some sax overall here, I think, as well. I think that's what I wrote. No, I don't know what that is I wrote. Well, it can't be perfect, right? Anyways, nice heavy piano here, and it goes on fairly lengthy on the song. It's not bad. I like it. Okay, so the next 2 songs are the last 2. Pteropod, which is a type of flying reptile, or a flying dinosaur if you prefer. But the name of the song is Pteropod. A nice piano opening and riff. Some instruments creating a more of a distorted sound to the piano and everything. So you started with this nice kind of piano bit, and then it slowly, almost impenetrably, starts getting distorted. And they like to creep up on you with that stuff, see how far they can push you, I guess. And then there's a sax part, which is quite good and very mellow towards the end of the song. So, and then we get to the very last track, which is called Just Say Yes. This was my favorite track on the album. I gave it a 6, but I liked it better than the other 6s. It's a very spacey organ. So they use an organ and a synthesizer together here to create this kind of really spacey feel to the song. And then there's some percussion chimes and stuff like that that kind of add to the overall atmosphere of the song. And it is quite and it goes on. I think it may be the longest track on the album. It's a little over 6 minutes. There's a few others that are at least 6 minutes, maybe a little longer. Nothing over 6 minutes though, or nothing over 7 minutes, I guess is a better way of putting it. So very spacey theme, I think, and very it's actually quite a relaxing song. I like some space rock. I've discovered that over the last year or so, as I started to discover some bands that are a little bit on the spacey side, like Hawkwind and Eloy, having some of that space sound to them. I like that quite a bit. So this part I really like. This, to me, is one of the more progressive songs on the album, and more spacey songs on the album, and definitely it's too bad it didn't come at the beginning and then things would build from that, but it came at the end. It's still my favorite track by quite a bit. It wasn't strong enough for me to give it a 7, but it's definitely the strongest of the 6s on the album. So overall, my experience with this band is they're okay. Would I purchase their albums? Well, I might. It would depend on the cost of them, really. Like, if they're not too expensive. If I go to a yard sale and see them, I'm not likely you're going to see this at a yard sale, but if I'm going to visit the big city this week, and we'll be going to several different record stores that I have not been to, hoping to find some unusual stuff that I haven't been able to get here. Otherwise, I may have to go to Laser's Edge and order some of this stuff, which is a little bit pricey, but I'm hoping that I can find some stuff here for reasonable prices, or maybe find a deal or two. Something like this might be something that I would consider buying for that deal or two. I don't want to spend too much on stuff like this because I'm not going to listen to it a lot. Now, these guys, of course, are an American progressive rock and avant-garde band, so that's not, and plus they're instrumental. So instrumental, American, so these two things not necessarily in their favor. Although my interest in some American bands has begun to grow. The White Wing one that I heard, that was a big one that I liked quite a bit, and I think I didn't even mind some of the other American stuff I've heard so far on this series. So anyways, Bird Songs of the Mesozoic, Fault Line is the album. I believe it's from 1989. Pretty solid album overall. And anyways, we hope you enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed doing it, actually. At first I wasn't sure I was going to enjoy doing it, but it came along and I became interested in it quite a bit. So please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video, and we'll be back on day 24 for another progressive rock album of the 1980s. So I hope that you have a good evening, and this will come out tomorrow morning at its normal time, 8, and we will see you then. Bye.